Okay, so we've got a one-dimensional projectile question. So the projectile is going vertically upwards and then coming vertically down, and it starts with a velocity of 14 meters per second. Part A asks us to determine the speed of the particle and the distance of the particle from the ground 0.5 seconds after projection. So we're going to do the speed part first. So for part A, now, because it's only in one dimension, the speed is the same as the velocity, because the velocity is only upwards or downwards. So let's have a look. We're using our Suvat equations. So S we're not interested in. U, the initial velocity, is 14. V is what we're trying to find. A is the acceleration due to gravity, minus 9.8. And T is 0.5 seconds. So I'm looking for the equation which links u, v, a and t, and that's v equals u plus at. So we'll substitute in bits we know, v we don't know, equals 14 plus minus 9.8, so minus 9.8 times 0.5. So v is equal to 14 minus 4.9, which gives me an answer of 9.1 meters per second. Notice the velocity is positive. If it had been negative 9.1 meters per second, if it was going downwards at 9.1 meters per second, because the question asked for the speed, you would still give it as 9.1. You give it as the magnitude. Okay, and then we're going to try and find the distance. So in this case, where S is the bit we're trying to find, U is 14, V we're not interested in, A is minus 9.8, and T is 0.5. We could, of course, have used our 9.1 here. It tends to be a poor idea to do that, just because if you've made a mistake in the earlier part, you don't want that mistake to carry forwards. And here we can use our equation which connects S, U, and T, which is S equals ut plus half at squared. So here S equals 14 times 0.5 plus a half a, so plus minus a half of minus 9.8 to minus 4.9 times 0.5 squared. 14 times 0.5 is 7. 4.9 times a quarter is 1. Let me just do that on my calculator. 4.9 times 0.5 squared gives me 1.225. And 7 minus that gives me an answer of 5.775. Part B is significantly trickier. So it wants to know the total distance travelled by the particle during the first 2 seconds of its motion. So let's start by finding the distance from the ground after 2 seconds. So again, we're using Suvat. S is what we're trying to find. U equals 14. A equals minus 9. V we're not interested in. A equals minus 9.8. And T equals 2. So we can say S equals ut plus half at squared. And that tells us S equals 14 times 2. Minus 4.9 times 4. So it's going to be 28 minus 19.6, which gives me 8.4 meters. Now, the difficulty here is that we just don't know at 2 seconds. My projectile goes upwards and then it goes downwards. Now, what I don't know is at 2 seconds, is it on the upward part of the trajectory or the downward part of the trajectory? If it's on the upward part of the trajectory, then we've got our answer. 8.4 meters, it's reached a height of 8.4 meters, that's great. If it's on the downward part of the trajectory though, I've gone all the way up to the top and then I've got down again to get to a height of 8.4. We don't know which one of those it is. So that's what we're going to have to work out. So we're going to start looking at what's happening right here at the top. And we know that at the top, the velocity is 0. So we're going to find out when is velocity 0. So when is the equal to 0. So let's try and work it out using suvat again. S is what I'm trying to find. I'm trying to find the height at which it gets to be equal to 0. U is 14, V equals 0, A equals minus 9.8, and T we're not interested in at the moment. We want to know the height when V is the maximum height that this reaches. So here I've got V squared equals U squared plus 2AS, which tells me that 0 equals 14 squared minus 2 times 9.8 times S. So we get here, that gives me 19.6 S equals 196. So S is going to be 10 metres. So we know the maximum height now is 10 metres. We're going to put that in. Now I want to find out what the time is when it gets to the top. So here we're saying we're not interested in what S is. U is 14, V is 0, A is minus 9.8, and T is what we're trying to find out. So here, again, we're looking for what connects U, V, A, and T, and we've got V equals U plus AT. 0 equals 14 minus 9.8 T. So T is equal to 14 over 9.8. 14 over 9.8 14 divided by 9.8 gives me an answer of 1 3/7 seconds. So we know up here we've gone for 1 3/7 seconds and the height is 10 metres. So we now know that at 2 seconds we're down here. The height, which we worked out earlier on over here, is 8.4 metres. That height is at 8.4 metres. If it had gone all the way up to the top and down to the bottom again, it would have been 20 metres. It's missing these 8.4 metres, so our final answer is going to be 20 minus 8.4, which gives me 11.6 metres.